Well, hello and welcome back to the Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. Today, we have Dr. Patrick Porter. Dr. Patrick Porter it's wonderful to have you here, and we have so much to talk about. Dr. Patrick Porter is an award-winning author, educator, consultant, entrepreneur, and speaker with 20 years of experience operating the largest self-help franchise in the world. He has now become a highly sought-after expert, having sold over 3 million, I think, of your self-help products worldwide, and highly sought-after speaker. So we're very lucky to have got some time with you. Thank you so much. Dr. Porter has been on the cutting edge of brainwave entrainment technology for 32 years. He's won numerous awards: Best New Gadget of the Year at the Consumer Show, Best New Health App in 2019, and his newest brain training platform, which I'm most excited about, is called BrainTap. And it is distinctively designed to activate the brain's neuroplasticity. So the BrainTap headset, mine's on its way, otherwise I'd show it you, uses light and sound technology in combination with visualization audio sessions, and it helps people achieve brain fitness, overcome stress, even lose weight and stop smoking, manages pain, accelerate learning, and very specifically improves your sleep. So Dr. Porter is also Dean of Mind-Based Studies at the International Quantum University. And I could go on. He has starred on numerous TV shows, in journals. I know that you're highly in demand since COVID hit. And in your spare time, Dr. Porter, I know that you have written some books. I very much enjoyed Awaken the Genius, Mind Technology for the 21st Century, which was awarded Best How-To Book of 1994. Awaken the Genius is translated into 4 languages, and more than 150,000 copies have sold globally. He's also the author of Discover the Language of the Mind and Thrive in Overdrive, How to Navigate Your Overloaded Lifestyle. So a very busy man. We're very honored to have you here. And we were just chatting here, and you've just dropped in another huge award. You have just been awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from the IAFNA, International Association of Functional Neurology and Rehab. Absolutely amazing. Congratulations, first of all.
Well, yeah, it was unexpected, but we strive to better a billion brains. That's the goal. So they're all helping. So
absolutely amazing. So we have so much to talk about. I want to get into BrainTap and what it does and how it works. I love the science behind it, as you know. But first, just briefly, tell us, how did you arrive here? Did you set out as a child wanting to meddle with the brain, or what's your story?
Well, I was blessed to be the son of an alcoholic. So that's how we got introduced to it. My dad was going through his own crisis, and we were brought up Catholic. So the priest and nun came over, Sister Mary and Father Fitzpatrick, and said, "Hey, Michael," that's my dad's name, "we're going to teach you how to do this technology-driven meditation." And of course, my dad, this was in the 70s, early 70s. So there was no, I mean, it was like, that was like talking about voodoo back then, right? But my dad couldn't get out of his own really low-level chronic stress. He didn't realize it. So he was drinking to avoid the stress. And after one night of doing meditation, it changed his whole life. He realized that once he could shift gears by using the breathing techniques, the meditation, and the Silva method was the name of it. So some people might know the Jose Silva. My dad actually went on to become one of the first Silva instructors in America. I grew up with it after that. I was a very gifted troublemaker. So, I joke that our Sister Barbara, who's my second grade teacher, loved me so much, she had me in her class twice. So, I did second grade twice just to figure it out. They said I wasn't mature enough. I was just a real troublemaker. But I remember creating my own first session at 12 years old. That's when cassettes first came out in our area, for those that remember those. And what I would do is, you could actually set an alarm clock with a cassette player in it. So it woke me up to my affirmations in the morning. So I've been doing it for a long time, and it helped me. It shifted my gears. My dad, he didn't tell me it was going to help me in school, although that it did. You know, it
Yeah.
helped me to become smarter, and that's where a lot of the things you read about in Awaken the Genius came from, the learning. But he had me use it for sports. I became a 3-sport captain, got a scholarship to college, and there's no way that would have happened if I didn't meditate and learn about these things. And then to kind of fast forward, I was never going to do what my dad did. My dad was a seminar leader, you know, but I was helping him the whole time, going to school, and I got a job. I went to school for electronics and found out I was making more money and helping more people with my dad's business than it was being in electronics.
Okay.
So I started playing around. I became a researcher for a company in Scottsdale, Arizona called Light and Sound Research. And we were the 6 people that invented the very first portable light and sound machine. We've sold close to 240,000 of those now since the 80s. The new unit, kind of fast forward, I did have a franchise during that time for 27 years that I sold. And when I sold that, of course, I was just going to do, this was going to be a little business. This BrainTap thing was going to be, because I was just kind of semi-retired. But it's all over the world now. I'm in 120 countries. We've got 12 research partners, universities around the world that are helping us out. And it just kind of, this is the time people are realizing that they have to do something about their brain. And since it helped me first for learning, that's one of my passions, but now it's about memory, concentration, focus, and concussions. We're really big in the sports world with professional sports.
You are, because I've seen quite a few amazing testimonials. So
Yes.
tell us about who some of the people, I know there's thousands and thousands and thousands, but tell us about some of the amazing people that you've worked with.
Well, we have a guy named Corey Anderson, who's an MMA fighter, and there's a station here in the US called ESPN, which is a sports station. And he knocked a guy out in 1:37. And he said, it was so cool because it was on TV. He said, before they showed a picture of him in his room, before he went out to fight, he was doing his brain tap in the locker room. And they said, what were you doing there? He says, well, I was visualizing that he was listening to a session that we have, Your Time to Shine. It's a sports program, you know, so you can live up to your potential. He said, I saw that I was going to knock the guy out in 1:37. And they go, you knocked him out in 1:37. He says, yeah, I know. I saw it in my head first, you know, so he was visualizing it and it made it happen. We are also in a lot of Olympians. So we do a lot with, right now we're doing a study with the snowboarders here in the US, the US Olympic snowboarder team. And the main reason is snowboarding is a sport where you're falling on your head all the time, you're getting concussions. And so far what we've seen is that we're trying to prove out that you can neuroprotect, or you can preempt the damage that your brain's getting by keeping it healed. And what I mean by that is neuroprotective means that it has enough blood flow, circulation. You can detox the brain, and we can talk all about these things. So I'll share how we do that. But what we're finding so far the whole season while they're going through it is there hasn't been a severe enough concussion yet to say that they've had a concussion. Now they've all been using BrainTap. So if they do make it through the season, it'll be the first time ever that that's ever happened. I don't know if it'll make it through the whole season, but we're showing that they can do that. Now with hockey here in the US, they just finished the women's the women's college hockey tournament, the NCAAs, which is what it's called. And the number 2 team, they had never made it to the finals. We were doing a study with them for sleep, because with COVID, they put all the hockey teams in one hotel, and they all had to stay in there. They had to stay in their rooms. It was not like normal. Normally, if you're going to a championship, you're all festive and happy, but they're keeping them all in rooms, and just, you know, it's really bad situation. And so what we want to do is say, hey, what if we could teach them how to brain tap? Because they weren't sleeping, you know, they changed up the whole environment. So they were sleeping well. They made it all the way through the finals. Unfortunately, they lost in overtime for the national championship, but that was the Northeastern girls hockey team. And now we've got a program we're doing because the Olympics are coming up again, we're going to be working with the Olympic hockey team. But a lot of sports athletes, if people want to see more, all they do is go online and put in #BrainTap. They'll see literally hundreds, and movie stars, all sorts of people. Yeah. And the neat thing is, like, we had somebody come to us and go, how can you afford all those people, you know, out there endorsing your product? They think we're paying them. We don't pay any of those people. They do it all because it's helping them. And right now the brain is something, I think 2020 is going to be the decade of the brain, just like the 70s. If you think about the 70s, we all those that remember it, 70s are now known as like when Arnold Schwarzenegger came along, physical fitness, everybody taking care of their bodies. Now, almost everybody you talk to knows, hey, I'm going to go work out. I'm going to walk. I'm going to lift weights. I'm going to do something. And that's really good for the brain as well.
Yeah.
But everybody knows about it. I think by the end of 2030, everybody's going to know what beta is, alpha is, acetylcholine, GABA, gamma. These kind of terms are going to be normal, and I think because, we all have one way to go. The biggest fear in the world right now is not fear of public speaking anymore. It's fear of losing your memories. So.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's the time. So let's get into, if people haven't heard of BrainTap, you will have tapped into their interest there. And I know it's not just athletes who you spoke about in depth, but there's movie stars, there's all kinds of people, a huge amount of very impressive testimonials for very different things. So for learning lines to sleeping to performance. So tell us what it is. I can see in the background there because mine.
Yeah, we have a picture of it back here. What we're doing is we're showing it has visor lights and it has ear lights. So let's start with the lights first so people understand that. Light in general is going to be good for the brain. Right now, the most underprescribed nutrient on earth is light. So when they put us in our homes and said we couldn't go outside, that's like the worst thing we can do for our bodies. Every cell of our body has something called chromophores, which is like little solar batteries. And the energy comes from light, sound, and vibration. So when we're talking about light, we need to get that light into our body, and then that energy circulates through the body and finds the cells, the mitochondria that's dying. So we wanted to direct it to the brain. So through the eyes are not just brain attached to the brain, the eyes are brain matter. So with your eyes closed, the light is going to keep the frontal cortex, this part of the brain that's the executive functioning. Most of the time when people meditate, they actually shut down their frontal cortex and then they fall asleep and they think that's meditation. That's not meditation at all. Meditation is when your body appears to be asleep, but your mind's awake. So you're doing a lot of neurological activity. If you want to have those kind of, if you will, out of body kind of experiences, you got to be present, or your consciousness will take you somewhere else. Did I lose you? Oh.
Yeah.
There we go. So what happens with the light is through the closed eyelids, we're going to introduce photic energy into the brain. Now it's going to happen something called photobiomodulation, which maybe someone else is going to talk about that on the conference as well. But what that means is the hemoglobin absorbs light energy, circulates through the body, finds those cells that are in cell death, and then exchanges the energy and creates something called ATP. The biggest thing that happens when somebody has a brain trauma, and every one of us has had brain trauma through our life. In fact, how our brain remodels after falling down about 3,000 times as a child, that's really what makes us up who we are. If it remodeled correctly, then we're in good shape. But if not, it will remodel and maybe not use a portion of the brain because there was damage there. And so, but light, your brain can heal at any age. There's no doubt. So through the ears, the reason we put light in the ears is something called auricular therapy, because all the meridians in the body come through the ear. So if we put light energy in there, all the blood in the ears takes between 3 and 4 minutes to circulate, where the rest of the body, it's 45 seconds. So that means the blood is condensed in that area. We can introduce 470 and 630 nanometer light, which happens to be the light from the sun. So we're taking ancient technology or ancient techniques, and we're going to move it into modern technology. So what we did is, what is the light rays that that tune up our brain in the morning? Because we got to wake up our brain. So we're basically in sync with our sun. So we took those same lights and now we're introducing them. You can listen in the morning. We have sessions called Digital Coffee. They kind of move a little bit faster. They're only about 10 minutes in length. We have sessions at night that we basically just say, go to sleep. Because what it's going to do is going to train the brain to get into that deep delta, which is deep sleep. Level 4 sleep is what we need to detox the brain. So the BrainTap actually trains you or conditions you to move through it. And the science is called frequency following response. But in nature, it's something called entrainment. Everything in nature is entrained. If you've ever heard the cicadas out in the woods and the wilderness, or the birds singing, or the birds flying together, or all of those things are because nature is always trying to synchronize and get in harmony with each cell. If not, then that becomes a destructive nature. So we're using light to do that. But then we're also layering on top of that sound. So if people can't afford our light headset, you can do this all with just we have our phones, right? You can put it on the app. and you can use your own earphones, because not only with our eyes too, I should say, when you're looking at somebody and you're listening to a lecture, 30% of your hearing actually comes in through your eyes. So when you close your eyes, you're literally shutting off half of the nervous system. But if you have light stimulus, we're keeping that third of the brain that would go to sleep during most. Now, with proper meditation practice, you keep your brain awake, because there are plenty of people that know how to meditate without brain tap that keep their brain awake, but it takes a lot of practice. So we're saying you don't need all that practice. We can do it for you. Now, within our sound part of our body, our ears are listening to, even though we're talking here, Sally, the reality is that you're also hearing up to 25,000 other pieces of information. So if we were at dinner together and we were having a conversation and we're talking, and somebody three tables over says something about neurological function, let's say, we would hear that even though we didn't hear any of the other conversation. Or if they said something like Joe Dispenza or something like that, we would hear that because we both know who Joe is. Our ears would pop up. What are they saying over there? And that's called the reticular activating system, or the default mode network. It's always engaged with reality, but we only act on 40 pieces of information. So that means that your brain is really filtering all that out. So what we did with BrainTap is, what can we do to set up a unique stimulus, like binaural beats, isochronic tones, solfeggio frequencies, and Nogier frequencies? We've got a proprietary blend of these different frequencies, because our body is always trying to attune or stay in tune with its environment. Now, we can go to the ocean, like if you and I were to go down to the ocean and sit and listen to the waves, our body would slow down, our brain waves would slow down, and we would get in sync with the ocean, which happens to be 10 hertz frequency. So Sally, if you and I were in a spaceship coming toward Earth and we were to see the Earth at a distance, we would be able to measure the frequency response of the planet from 0.01 to 100. The only other thing that I know of that does that is the human brain. So our brain matches. So if we're at the tree line, let's say, or in the mountains meditating, the reason the gurus go there is they're sitting in an isochronic tone generator called a mountain, or in the cave. It's resonating this frequency of 7.8 hertz frequency, happens to be theta. So now they're really close to those spiritual experiences. And what we know is when you cross over 10 hertz frequency and you cross over 7.8 hertz frequency, you get both a gamma burst and you get a delta burst. And what I mean by that is gamma now is associated with higher states of creativity, spiritual healers, high intuition. I mean, we now know that, like the Buddhist adepts that they're doing all the research on up in Wisconsin University here in the US, when they do their compassion or their different meditations, they're spiking gamma like crazy. And 10 years ago, you'd say something about gamma and they thought it was like a schizophrenic brainwave. Now they know it's a high spiritual state. We know people like that channel, or that do channel energy or channel different intelligence. When we've measured them with EEGs or things like the Wavi device, they're in a high state of gamma. And also we know when athletes are performing at their highest level, they're in a high state of gamma. So what we're trying to do is, how can we mimic nature, but do it with technology? So we match up the light and the sound to get the brain to coordinate that. And then we're going to use something that most of the listeners probably know about from Bruce Lipton in his book, Biology of Belief, when he talks about epigenetics. Because not only does light and sound change your epigenetic, let's say what's turned on and turned off, because you're getting into these states, but words. Positive psychology plays a strong role in how our brain turns on and off. What are we saying to ourselves or others? So we have sessions that are just music, and we have some that are music and words, and guided imagery, in other words. And the music that we choose is very important, because we choose music that creates what's called the Mozart effect. And what they showed with that is that your brain works better with this kind of holographic stereo, kind of what they call 10 cycle musics, really. So if you've ever been to a symphony, I love the symphony. So I go there and I'm looking around and half the people are sleeping, and they're sleeping because they don't know how to handle alpha, because that music actually sinks your brain into alpha. So what they do is they go to sleep, because their brain knows, oh, alpha, theta, delta, they're going to sleep. And then they wake up and they gladly pay that couple $100 the next month, because they can't get that good nap at home, right? So so we've combined all of those things. We've combined actually 5 different sciences, and they all work well separately. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to see what would happen if I stacked these different brain hacks, if as you will, and how can we get a result? So what we found was we could take people I'll just give you one study right now so your listeners will kind of understand where I'm going. We took women 55, 65 years old. This was our pilot study that's now in a bigger study with a college here called Seminole College down in Florida. But in our pilot study, we had five women who were all on the dementia scale, go to their doctor, he diagnosed them. I'm going to make this short because it could go on for a little bit. But so they were diagnosed with it. We had them take a test called the Cambridge Science Brain Test. They all tested with dementia. We then measured their brains using something called the WAVI, which is an instrument that measures EEG, kind of like what you had done with Joe at his seminar, where they show you the brain map, what's your brain doing. And what we found was they all were diagnosed from their doctor as dementia. They all were scored on the Cambridge Science test that they had dementia. They all had the left hemisphere was moving slower than the right hemisphere, which is very hard to fix on your own. So what we did with the BrainTap, we can actually train one hemisphere over the other. So we created a series of sessions. We call it the New Mind program because people that have dementia feel like they've lost their mind. So they haven't, they've just lost when you think of memory, those memories don't just come in one form. They come from 8 different places in the brain or more. So your brain has to represent them. And if you're stressed out or you're worried or you have a damaged area of the brain, if that information appears in a very slow way, let's say when it's supposed to go there like this, but it takes even a millisecond, the brain will rewrite the program and edit out that information because it doesn't like to work so hard. It's already using a lot of energy. So we need to get energy to the brain, right? We do that in the form of photic light, in sound, in vibration, because our bodies convert everything to energy, not just food. I mean, people think they get their energy from food, but most of your energy comes from the air we breathe, from the life force that's in the air, the prana. So as we ignite the body in the cellular systems, what happens is the body starts to go to where it needs the healing the most. So 6 weeks, they had to do morning sessions, afternoon sessions, and evening sessions. We had a whole protocol for it. And at the end of 6 weeks, we sent them back to their doctor before we tested them. We want to see what their doctor would say. Their doctor on all 5 said, if you would have came to me like this, I would have never diagnosed you with dementia.
Wow.
They will do skills. So then we had them take the Cambridge Science test again.
Tell me the protocol again. 3 times a day for how long? How many minutes per session?
The morning session we call digital coffee, which is 10 minutes. It uses a brainwave called SMR, sensory motor rhythm. We all know as we get better looking and more intelligent with age, certain things happen to our balance, right? We always see the elderly walking around, they don't have balance. It's not a physical fitness problem. It's a brain problem. It's a brainwave called SMR. So what we did is we engaged that brainwave. And once you train it and condition them through meditation, then the brain can do it on its own. And then in the afternoon, we have a session, we call it a reboot session, because as you get tired, and what we do here in America anyway, they might do it also in Australia, but they go get coffee, tea, sugar, some way they keep stimulating their biological system when we're light beings. Literally, that's not a figurative speech. Yeah. We share information through biophotons. We are giving and receiving light all the time. So, but if our light isn't bright anymore, because we don't have the energy at the cellular level, our mitochondria is communicating in light all the time. But, we all know people that walk in the room and it becomes a little bit darker. And it tends to be the more negative. So when somebody gets depressed, anxious, starts displaying those negative behavior traits, or they become addicted to really being negative. That's their life. They get up in the morning, they might even be feeling good, but because they're so convinced that life is terrible, they start creating that, then they kind of turn down their light. And that comes in the form of ATP production, which we can measure across the brain. We can measure how much energy somebody has. So the first thing we need to do is up that energy. That's what the middle of the afternoon is. We show that if you do a BrainTap session at 2 o'clock, and that's a magical time if you can do it at that time, because at 2 o'clock, wherever you're at, anywhere in the world, your temperature drops 2 degrees. That's one of the times when your biological system resets and your nervous system recalibrates. So what we do, of course, because these bodies were designed for the Serengeti, not for the way we live, right? So we're supposed to be taking a nap, but we don't do that anymore. It's not just cats that should sleep 20 hours a day. A lot of people should as well, to heal their body. That's how they're going to heal, but we never let ourselves do that. So in the middle of the day, we reboot. So really we're giving them 2 mornings. You get a lot more work done in the morning. So that's what I do. Every day at 2 o'clock, that's my time. They know that that's blocked out. Now in the evening, what we did is we said, we need you to listen to our Go to Sleep program. And the reason for that is, you've probably heard the expression, the masses are asleep. You've ever heard that expression where like the people are just asleep, they're not awake. Well, when we measure the brains of people, we've measured about 30,000 brains in the last 10 years. And more than 70% of the brains that we've evaluated were over 90% delta, which means their brain, they were awake running around, but their brain had either so much inflammation, so much damage, and they were stimulating, or they were using drugs to keep themselves propped up, or they were using synthetics like coffee and sugar and tea and things like that. So we needed to teach the brain to regulate. What happens, unfortunately, under chronic low-level stress is the brain deregulates. So the whole nervous system deregulates. And this has something to do with our heart center. If our heart's not in our job, we're not loving it, we have 40,000 neutrino cells in our heart, and we can measure that through heart rate coherency, right? So we're going to use that as part of the study too, to show how their nervous system operates. So by doing that 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening, they reset or recalibrated their nervous system. And what we know is, Wayne Dyer once said, you never let an old person inhabit your body. That was one of the things he was really favorite of saying. And some people just think you're supposed to get old as we age, which isn't the case at all. If we look at ancient cultures, they kept the wisdom with the tribal elders. They didn't keep the wisdom with the tribal youngsters. You never hear about that. So we have the capacity to do that. So this study, what we wanted to show people was you can heal your brain at any age. Now, it's better if you catch it before it's full-blown dementia. These were onset dementia. Now, let me tell you about the final results of that study, because they blew us away. We're partners with Duke University here, which is a very big university here in the United States. And when we took this to their neurological board, they were like, wow, you can do that. And so we've had our doctors verifying that. And now we're running a bigger study so that we can share that with the world. But the first thing we found was, when we did the neurological test, they had the average neurological change was 49% greater neuroplasticity.
Wow.
So that was phenomenal. But the other thing that was phenomenal is, if you or anyone gets upset in the morning and they're still talking about it in the evening, they don't know how to unplug, how to get their nervous system out of that stress gear and into that relaxed gear. So their HRV is probably pretty terrible if you get stressed out and you stay there. With this group, what we wanted to show them was, how do you adapt after a stressful event? So we would actually stress them out and measure their response. Their evoked potential improved 58%, which means they were able to regulate their brain's function within seconds after a stressful event, 58 times better than they were before. And that's really what it comes to. So what we now know with light, sound, and vibration in the brain is, I'm sure that's why iAFNR gave me the award, because what they do is, after any treatments they do, before they leave the clinics, they have them listen to BrainTap, because we're going to use Hebb's law, right? The people listening to this might know Hebb's law states that those neurons that fire together wire together, and then those neurons that fire apart tend to stay apart. So we want to get the bad habits, of course, unplugging. We want to get the good habits plugging in. And we know that if they did other things like nutrition would have been even better, but this was a study just with the hardware. So, you can, if you do the right supplementation. Now, the key, Sally, is that we only detox our brain during deep level 4 sleep. So if you're not getting level 4 sleep, your brain's not detoxing. And in 2016, American Scientific came out with a report that said we now have glial lymphomic vessels in our brain, which is the lymphatic system. They were always there, but the medical community just found them in 2016. And they said, why didn't we see them before? Well, they only open during sleep. And most people out there have probably had the experience where in the middle of the night, they woke up, but they couldn't move their body. They call it paralytic sleep. If you woke up during that time, you actually woke up in the middle of a cleaning cycle. You're not your biology, right? You're beyond this biology. So, but you animate the biology. You're the energy of the source of creation that causes this body to move. And in order to fix it or detoxify, we have to leave it. So wherever we're going, but sometimes we come back and see what's going on here. Wherever we go during deep sleep, if we return back and get that paralytic sleep, and that's also, they say, might be something that happens when people leave their body during soul travel or astral projection and things of that nature.
So that study is incredible. And I also wonder, and I'm sure you'll do research on this, that was with older people who had the onset of dementia, and you had that 58% evoked potential increase. So I wonder what the rate would be with younger people, although of course the neuroplasticity you're working with, you're now showing that we can de-age the brain. But with younger people who naturally perhaps have more evoked potential, I wonder if that would be even more so.
Well, the nice thing is we've done when we do the healing potential of the brain and measure, of course, the younger and the healthier the person is, the faster it will heal and get better. Yeah. And there's a lot about healing the brain that has changed. You don't want people sitting around in dark rooms anymore. We need to get now also when we stimulate the brain with light, if you've just had a concussion, we don't ever do it right away with light because we bring too much blood flow and circulation sometimes.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to wait a little bit for the blood flow to come down, depending upon the trauma that we work with. But everybody's brain, the younger you are, the faster it's going to improve. The more you let it dysregulate, the longer it's going to take to get back on track. So, if somebody's thinking that's why we're doing the study with the Olympic team, is to just show, why not do this before you get in an accident? What happens? And we all know if you're physically fit and you get in an accident, you can bounce back faster. But if you didn't take care of yourself, then you have a health crisis. Your body doesn't have any resources to heal. Yeah. And it's that ATP production that heals the brain. It, creates vasodilation, blood flow, nitric oxide, all those wonderful things that heal the brain.
It's just amazing. So preventative, trauma management, reversing aging and things like dementia, but also the learning faster. Let's talk a little bit about that to me, because it is a big topic of concern at the moment, our children and learning and attention. So I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm guessing you've looked into that a little bit and you've got some.
Oh, yeah, we've done a lot of studies with that, because that was my passion when I first started. I used to do a lot with a group called SALT, Society of Accelerated Learning and Teaching. And that's where the Mozart effect came from. They said, hey, how can we play this Baroque classical music in a classroom without teaching them any skills? Just play that music in the background and our brain works better.
Yeah.
So what we want to do is, how can we work even better than that? So what we started doing was, when a child's tired, they should never be learning.
Yeah.
So we have a school in India. It's called the Creative School. They have 168 students there. Every classroom has a brain tap in it. And the students actually can, if they get stressed out or they get worried or they get anxious, they can at any time go back, do a brain tap session and get their brain back in gear. And the neat thing is, I get to go to India quite often because we're partners with Nimmans University, or Nimmans Hospital, and the All Indian Institute of Medical Science, and a couple others over there that we work with. But when we go over there, I get to meet these kids and they're using it. And the school also teaches martial arts. So they're teaching yoga, martial arts, brain tap, and it's all about keeping their energy up. So that's one way to do it, is to, when they're depressed or anxious, and give them resources in order to change, but also in the learning environment. When you've just learned something, let's say, and I have lots of tips in Awaken the Genius, like the power of X to learn and different techniques people use. But the reality is, after you've learned something new, that's when you should meditate.
Yes.
Yes. Because now your brain's going to take, the hippocampus now is engaged because you've just taxed it. What the brain is always doing when you're looking over information or listening, watching a movie, whatever it is, your brain's trying to figure out, why is Sally doing this? What's so meaningful about this? And as long as you haven't discounted it, it's going to try to associate all that information into your future, because it's always trying to protect you. So if it's information you want to learn, you can take it into that from short-term to long-term memory much faster by doing a meditative process.
Yes.
So with that's where we're using BrainTap to get them into that state.
Yeah.
The other is just teaching them state management. A lot of people, I tell people, could you imagine watching your favorite movie or TV show and the actors never practice or never rehearsed? It would be a terrible show. Nobody would watch it. But people get up every morning and do that in their own life. They never plan, they never prepare. And then at the end of the day, they go, I can't believe that happened to me. And I'm going, what do you mean? You didn't plan on anything else. So they let the default mode network take over and run their life, or the subconscious, however you want to look at that, the subconscious mind. So if we can awaken That's why I said awaken the genius.
Yeah.
And I should clarify that for the listeners, because in Roman mythology, that word genius comes from there. And what they said in Roman mythology is we all have a genie. And this genie houses our talents and skills. If we use our talents and skills, we're using our genie. Therefore, we're a genius.
I love
You know,
that.
so it doesn't mean that we're good at math or English or we're quantum physicists. It means that we're using, everyone has unique talents and skills. And what happens when you start using those talents and skills, you get more energy.
Yeah.
Because if you find out what juices you, like what gets you up in the morning, what makes you
Yeah.
excited, then you'll have all the energy you need. You know, but if you're doing something, there's a reason there's more heart attacks on Monday morning than any other day of the week. It's because their heart's not in it. And now if people are following any of HeartMath's information, they know that the heart communicates twice as much to the brain as the brain does to the heart. So the heart really controls the show. And then who we have as the third wheel that has to be taken care of is the gut. You know, we got to have that gut brain access. So, you know, all those, when we get a good night's sleep, we build up our neurotransmitter bank account.
Yeah.
So for instance, when we're meditating in alpha, we're literally instructing our gut to make acetylcholine. That's what happens when we're in alpha. So if we're in an environment of alpha, which means we're by the ocean or we're in love or we're doing gardening, whatever it is we love to do, our brain is literally doping us with these wonderful love drugs and we're feeling good about it. If we can dip into theta just for a little bit, and that's where we go most of the time because most adults are missing theta.
Yeah.
They're missing GABA. GABA gets triggered by two different brain waves, gamma and theta. So think of gamma like theta on steroids, because everything that theta does, but theta is a very low bandwidth. It's only 4 to 7 cycles per second. So most people just pass by that really quickly when they're going to sleep and when they're waking up.
Yeah.
But that's when you're not getting enough theta, you can't jump from alpha to delta. You can't sleep.
Yeah.
And 2/3 of the world's population isn't sleeping well. And the whole reason is their brain waves are out of condition. They haven't trained themselves to sleep well because of whatever stress is going on, just our environment. If you think about ancient cultures, they would, whether it be the Aborigines where you are or the Indians here, they would go to sleep under the stars.
Yeah.
You know, and when the fire went out, they'd go to bed. In the morning, they'd get up to the light of the sun. We're not doing those things. We have a whole synthetic world that's going on around us.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much in there, and I that's one of the things that really attracts me to you and your products is that you are taking on natural world and mimicking it to help what we've lost. You know, it's still our natural system. We haven't evolved past being in tune with the sun and the air and the frequency of the earth, but we've kind of lost our harmony with it, and you're bringing that back a little bit. I'm just going to clarify a few things just for those listeners who, you know, we're talking about theta and gamma and all the brainwaves, but one way that I often describe theta to people is because we've all that feeling when you are between worlds and when you're dropping off to sleep and you're and I always say if I could just go, you know, if somebody wakes you up in theta, you could go back into your dream. You could just pop in. So you're sort of in the dream world, but you're not awake yet. That's theta. And that's a beautiful place to hang out. And it's a magical place. And it's where we go when people put us in hypnagogic states or hypnotic trances. It's that between worlds state that we're talking about, which is so beneficial. And, you know, we can access those higher states with it. And gamma, we often call gamma super consciousness. So it's that heightened consciousness on steroids, which is a beautiful place to hang out too, as we know. And I love what you said about so students, I'm going to come back to this because it's so important, because it's something that I was very grateful to have learned, because you know, we all have different ways of studying. I tend to be a crammer and always have. And so I would, you know, if you're a crammer, you would be up the night before an exam. And I'm thinking of our young people watching now, you know, or older people, who, you know, anyone who's got to do tests or has a big day tomorrow or a presentation even, you know, you're cramming the day before perhaps. And what you would do is push all the way through and perhaps not sleep very well that night because you've got to get it all done. And learning that actually the optimal way to learn is perhaps a 90-minute study activity of getting into that flow, something that the brain could help you with, you know, but however you access that, the ideal is that 90-minute study cycle, and then that protocol of going into that that alpha theta state and letting it all go in. You're going to learn more. So I love that, because a lot of people, when we need to do that, would think, I don't have the time to do that. And if you're telling me to lie down and relax now, that's an oxymoron. I don't have the time to lie down and relax. Whereas what you're doing is going, sit for 10 minutes and pop this on. You don't have to do anything. And you're making it simple for people, which I absolutely love. And I love the analogy of Awaken the Genius. I haven't heard the story before behind that, so thanks for that too. So yeah, so for kids and young adults and older adults right the way through, this is some technology that's going to help us. Do you think, and have you got any studies here, that if you know, it's brain entrainment. So is it that you could use it for a certain period to get yourself, you know, if you have a sleep disorder, you would perhaps go to the doctor and they would give you a tablet and they would say, take that, but don't take it forever, because you want to train yourself into your natural cycle. Does BrainTap help you do that? Can you do a protocol?
Yeah. We have two different studies that show that it does it afterwards. One we're just finishing up is from Australia. I was just talking to you about it before we got on the air here. In Eastern Australia, we're doing a third shift workers, and we're studying what happens with the sleep, because third shift is bad, right? You're all out of whack. You're not sleeping with the cycles of the sun. And we want to see if we could synthesize that and see what would happen. And we've got some great results. But we had a 2-week washout. During that 2-week washout, means they didn't do BrainTap, nothing was happening. During that 2 weeks, they steadily continued to improve. So the improvement continued.
Nice.
We only studied them for 2 weeks after, but we had a study here in the US with autistic children. And by the way, autism is lack of alpha brainwave activity. So when we measure their brains, we notice they have little or no alpha, and that means they can't speak. Because if you don't have a lot of alpha, you can't communicate. Alpha is the brainwave that gets our body to coordinate. There's a lot of things happening just to get us to speak. It's not just think a word. You know, our diaphragm has to move right. Our muscles have to be in the right place. We have to blow enough wind through our wind. There's a lot of things have to be coordinated. We did a study for a 6-week study against a magnetic resonant therapy program. And at the end of 6 months after it was done, we had 23% alpha activity at the end of the study. Six months from there, we still had 23% alpha improvement in our people.
Wow.
The magnetic resonant therapy, which was almost $40,000 a person to do, they were all back. Nobody maintained their change because theirs was done through a trauma. And these kids were throwing up and everything, because magnets can make your brain move. You can get some pretty incredible things happening, but the problem is it's not permanent, because that's not the way we learn. We learn from nature. We learn through vibratory frequencies. We learn from light, sound, and vibration. And once the body learns it, and also our technology, even as expensive as it is, which isn't that much when you compare to what it does, but people typically will do it forever, or they'll do a meditation. It doesn't have to be BrainTap, but you have to do something, you know, because we're going to be attacked by stress all the time. Yeah. I always tell people, you either have to maintenance your own mind or someone's going to maintenance it for you. Yeah. So, you know, and that's the news, and, you know, the outer world is going to start dictating how you think, act, and respond. And you want to take that personal responsibility on yourself.
Yeah. And I love the way you described it as, you know, the analogy with the TV actors. I haven't heard that before. It's a brilliant analogy. Why don't we practice being who we want to be in life? Yeah. Going back to the school, because that captured me. Do you have any? Are you in any other schools? Is there any studies happening with schools with children?
Well, we have Duke University actually has something called Healthy Duke. And we started this before COVID. So we were doing it long before then. What we wanted to have was, we have an app for there's 6,000 students on hand. So obviously they can't all come to the health center to do a live BrainTap, and we're not going to give 6,000 headsets away. So we created a app for them called Healthy Duke. And now if they get stressed out, they can start using that to sleep better. And these are kids that aren't partying. I mean, these are some of the smartest kids in the world. So, but they stay up too late. They cram, like you're saying, they try to squeeze it all in. They think they're going to do it out. So that's one of the things we did. We're also in 4 other colleges, one in Canada as well. in high school, we have there's a high school up in Schenectady, New York, that we're getting really great results with. They're only using it in their, unfortunately, they're using it with all of the at-risk kids, which is fine, but everybody could use it. But, some schools just think, oh, it's got to be used when there's trauma, because, we have programs like for golf and sports. So it doesn't always have to be about a negative thing or something you want to change. You can improve your life or your communications, your wealth consciousness, whatever those I have a program I did for with Think and Grow Rich, the Napoleon Hill Foundation, which is 17 sessions that help you change your mindset about money. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. So are there any trials yet with ADHD and attention deficit issues?
We're in the middle of one right now. We have a school here called the Craven Early College. It's really a high school, but they're preparing kids for college, and they're not all there. This isn't the advanced courses. A lot of these kids are coming there because they might have flunked out of the regular school. These are all small classes. And we're doing a study right now with the teachers as well as the students to show if we bring down the stress of the teachers, they'll be able to train better. But also the kids, we're giving them a time to, instead of giving them homeroom and just letting them sit there and do nothing, they get to do a 10-minute brain tap session, and then they get to learn, and they have more energy. And so far it's going really well, but we'll have more of that. We did a study for the Waken the Genius project back with schools in Kentucky. We spent 4 hours teaching them classroom skills. And of course, we taught them how to meditate. We took kids, in order to participate, these 60 kids, they had to, first of all, tell us that they weren't going to attend college. That was one of the prerequisites. These were seniors that were just trying to get through school. They were not going to go to, and it was sponsored by a school called Pikeville College. So of course they wanted college enrollment. So they sponsored the study. These 4 hours, we taught them some what are called NLP skills. For those that know that, neuro-linguistic programming, that's one of my backgrounds. So we taught them how to read their instructor. We taught them how to ask right questions, and we taught them how to be relaxed. A lot of these kids they weren't relaxed in their own skin. They thought they were less than, and this was also a coal community. So they were told, my dad works at the coal mine, I'm going to work at the coal mine. That's all I can do. The exciting part was we took these kids in the first semester. By the time they graduated, they all had increased their grade point average up to A's and B's. They also had to be a C or D average. So they were A and B students. Wow. Out of the 60 kids that did the study, we call it the Pikeville study, we had 58 of them go to college. Remember, at the beginning of the study, none of them were going to do that. The 60 that went to college, the 58 that went to college, 48 of them went to a junior college, Prestonsburg Junior College in Kentucky. We followed them through their freshman year. They all finished. Amazing. Which is incredible.
That's changing lives right there. Just
so 50% of all colleges have almost a 50% drop. 50% of all enrolled freshmen drop.
Yeah.
And the reason is nobody taught them how to learn. Everybody's teaching them what to learn.
Yes.
So we're going to teach we learn so much different. People think we learn like languages, for instance. Do you speak more than one language?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have my science officer's name is Francisco Sidral. When he went with me to India, we were there for 3 weeks. By the time we were done, he was speaking Hindi.
Whoa.
And I said, Francisco, when did you learn Hindi? He said, just while we're here. But he speaks 6 languages. So his brain, that we have a brain circuit that has to do with language. If we don't learn another language by the time we're 7, that brain circuit shuts down. But if you kept it going, that brain circuit stays alive, and that circuit learns languages much faster than the other brain circuits. Yeah. So, so the old saying, use it or lose it. We need to keep using our brain for creative thinking, creative pursuits, and meditation is one of the best ways to do that, because you get to expand into the field of infinite consciousness. So you can just play there and be okay with it without rules.
Yeah. Amazing. And we know that bilingualism increases the brain function, increased creativity and lots of other things. Yep. So it's amazing that you can now go in and help to get that skill back with the brain tap. And I think
when we're that young too, when you're a child, you're operating in alpha and theta most of the time. Yes. So you're not in this beta brain that's so limited.
Yeah. Yeah. But you are creative. So you are. Yeah. Just to finish off the kids thing, just because my brain's gone here, I do quite a bit of work in schools as well, and I just think now is the time, because of COVID has hit so heavily. Well-being is on, is on the, it's a beacon, which it always should have been. But anyway, we're focusing in on kids' well-being now, and schools are being mandated, at least here and in the UK, I know, to have a well-being officer and look at well-being. And I know that some schools have got a well-being room, and I can just see the brain tap in the well-being room where it's not used as a punishment. I think that's not the way we're going. It's kind of, when you go into schools and talk about mindfulness, that can happen. We use it as a punishment. That's not the purpose here. The purpose is a gift to help you. Even if you're a baseline and not a negative line, it takes you to a plus. So it's so I just think that's going to be huge this year. The decade of the brain, and also the decade of let's change up education and help the kids with what they need right now, which is the attention training and the getting out of stress, and how do we regulate, and all of those emotional intelligence skills, which I think you can help with too. So that's very exciting. So Dr. Porter, I could talk with you for a long, long time. I mean, there's so many studies to hear about. There's so much going on in your world. It's just brilliant, but I am going to respect your time. So I'm going to ask you this, and I'm asking this to everybody here. The intention of this summit is that everybody comes and finds something, or many things, hopefully, that takes them to their next level, whether they're coming in physical, mental, spiritual, looking for something that takes them to the next level. So obviously your brain tapping hardware software is going to help. Aside from that, with all your experience looking at brains, researching brains, looking at optimal performance, what would be some tips, 1 or 3, or your top tips that people can implement today to take them to the next level of functioning?
The number one tip I give people it's a free tip. You don't have to buy anything. You own everything you need. When you're lying in bed tonight, don't try to fall asleep. Be present while you're sleeping. Our bodies are like electric circuits that hold a charge, and they need to discharge. Some people are so good at falling asleep that they wake up with clenched jaws, clenched muscles. They go to sleep stressed, and they wake up sleep and they wonder why they're tired. Unwind consciously. Take that moment. Your secret weapon is actually to be grateful, regardless of what happened to you. We know that changes your genetic expression. So if you want to turn on the healing capacity of your mind, which your brain is, your nervous system, 70% of your nervous system's in your brain. So if you want to calm that down, all the extremities. So I recommend that you can do any kind of breathing technique you want. So this might be layered onto number 2, but breathing is so important. Most people do not know how to breathe. And if you don't believe me, just watch the people you're talking with. You'll see them holding their breath all the time. Finally they go, especially if you're talking to them and you don't give them time to respond or breathe back. But what I like is just a simple breathing technique that I teach people. Now there's a lot more. So this is just number 1. They can start with if they're not doing it. Just breathe into the mental count of 4. That's going to trigger your sympathetic system. We want to train our electrical system to turn off and on when we need it the most. So that's going to trigger it. Then you're going to breathe out twice as long. So you're going to breathe out to the count of 4, to the count of 8. That's going to turn on your parasympathetic. What I like to call, you're going to trigger your survivor brain. You're going to turn on your thriving brain. And pretty soon you're going to notice that there's no longer any of the survivor left. You're just in thriving mode. Once you get there, usually by the time somebody gets to some people only get to their knees, some people get to their shoulders, some people get to their skull. But as soon as you do that and you've really relaxed your body, now you just fall asleep. And if you have a way to keep your sleep score, you'll find that your sleep score will accelerate, because what we do, it sometimes can take somebody 45 minutes to 2 hours to just get into sleep mode. But you can accelerate that by just relaxing your body at first. It's kind of a little self-hypnosis, if you will, but you're guiding yourself. That's number 1. The other tip that I would say is in the morning. Your morning is the time to reset and recalibrate your brain. And we are symbiotic with our environment. So if you can get outside, it's also free. Get out and touch the earth. Do something. We are designed to interact with our environment, not be so isolated from it. And if you can do that, and if you can do a meditation, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes in the morning, and set up straight, the spine is the keyboard of the brain. So if we want to get the brain activated in all that spinal fluid, that's what the physical manifestation of the Kundalini, which I was fortunate to study with Yogi Bhajan for 5 years when he was still alive. So when you think about breathing, which is like the pranayama and things like that, but your spine, your skull is actually breathing.
Yeah.
So when you're sitting up, you're pulling that energy up. The physical form is the spinal fluid, but everything happens physically also happens on the etheric level and on the subtle energy level. So you're going to feel that energy. And what we know, there was a professor at Cal Berkeley, her name was Virginia Hunt. She passed away now, but she was one of the first researchers that showed that when we calm down the brain, we increase our energy field. So when you do that in the morning, instead of, they know when you're stressed out or worried that your energy field collapses. But if you're open, receptive, and in joy and in harmony, your energy field expands. So take that time in the morning to expand it. And as soon as you feel that you're in that expansive state, visualize your day.
Yeah.
Visualize the people you'll talk with, visualize the outcomes you want for yourself.
Yes.
And then don't try to get spiritual, because you can't be more than what you are. You are a spiritual being having a physical experience. So accept that. And what happens when you accept it, magic happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. And I just want to put at the end there, because you said it before, when you're practicing your day and you're sitting there and you've calmed your nervous system, you're practicing who you want to be. So rehearse who you want to be. Rehearse how you want to show up, how your day is going to go over it. And like the example you gave us of the boxer, though not my favorite sport, but a good example. That's a good example of, this is how I saw it. Of course it played out. So
and it is painful for me to see that too. I mean, I went to see some of our boxers. It's like brutal. And I used to box, but I never thought about it when I was younger. But when you're older and you know what the brain does, I'm like going, I hope my grandkids never box.
That's exactly right. I say to my kids, you do anything, but anything that is involved in banging your brain, I'm sorry, I cannot support. I know too much.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, you've given us some absolute wonder, and I just think you're a brilliant human being. You're just a wonderful package of science-based, let's get down to 3D level of science, and layered upon and spiritual being in a human body. So you're a wonderful package, and your package is wonderful behind you there. We've got the headset, and it's just an amazing product. So thank you so much for all that you do in the world. Thank you so much for joining us and spreading your wisdom. We'll obviously drop all of the contents of where we can find you and the headset and the research articles and everything underneath here. Take care of yourself. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Sally. And we'll be in touch. Thank you.